There's a moment on the inner path that almost no one prepares you for. A moment that arrives quietly, without drama, without collapse, without obvious pain. You've done the work. You've reflected. You've confronted patterns you once avoided. And instead of feeling clearer, stronger, or more alive, you feel empty. Not sad, not anxious, just flat. Life continues, but something inside feels strangely absent. Many people panic at this point. They assume something went wrong, that they've lost themselves, that they've regressed. But according to Carl Jung, this stage is not a failure. It is a threshold. Jung observed that psychological growth does not unfold in a straight line. It moves in cycles. And one of the most misunderstood phases in those cycles is dissolution. The moment when old structures fall apart before new meaning appears. This stage is uncomfortable not because something is broken, but because something familiar has ended. Most people expect growth to feel like progress, more motivation, more direction, more certainty. But Jung understood something deeply unsettling. Before the psyche can reorganize at a higher level, it must first let go of the old order. And when that order dissolves, there's a gap, a pause, a silence. That silence is what many people mistake for emptiness. If you are in this stage, you may notice things that once excited you no longer do. Goals that once drove you feel hollow. Old ambitions lose their urgency. You go through the motions of life, but without the same emotional charge. This can be frightening, especially in a world that equates meaning with movement. Jung described this phase as a kind of psychological winter, a period where outer growth slows, so inner transformation can occur. In winter, nothing looks alive on the surface, but beneath the ground, something essential is happening. Roots deepen, old matter decomposes, space is created. The psyche works the same way. What makes this stage so unsettling is that it does not announce itself as growth. It feels like loss of identity, loss of momentum, loss of self. But what is actually being lost is not your essence. It is the structures you used to rely on. Carl Jung believed that much of what we call identity is provisional, built from roles, defenses, adaptations, and expectations. These structures serve a purpose. They help us survive. They help us belong. They help us function. But they are not permanent. And when the psyche senses it is time to grow beyond them, it begins to withdraw energy from those forms. That withdrawal is felt as emptiness. This is why many people say, I don't know who I am anymore. Nothing feels meaningful. I feel disconnected from myself. But this does not mean the self is gone. It means the old ego image is losing its grip. Jung warned that this stage is often misdiagnosed. People label it depression, or laziness, or loss of motivation. Sometimes it is those things, but sometimes it is something else entirely. It is the psyche clearing space. In Jungian psychology, this is sometimes called a night sea journey, a descent into uncertainty, where familiar reference points dissolve. The ego hates this journey because the ego depends on definition. It needs to know who it is, what it wants, where it's going. When those answers disappear, the ego feels threatened. This is why the first reaction to this stage is often anxiety. Not anxiety about something specific, but vague, floating unease. A sense that time is passing, and you're not moving, that others are progressing, while you're standing still. But Jung emphasized something crucial. This stage is not about doing. It is about not forcing. The psyche cannot be commanded to produce meaning on demand. Meaning emerges when the conditions are right. And sometimes the condition required is emptiness. Think of a field after harvest. The crops are gone. The land looks barren. To someone who doesn't understand cycles, it looks abandoned. But to a farmer, this is preparation. The soil is resting, breaking down old matter, regaining fertility. The psyche follows a similar rhythm. Many people interrupt this process. They rush to fill the emptiness. They create new goals, new identities, new narratives, anything to escape the discomfort of not knowing. But Jung warned that premature meaning is one of the greatest dangers in psychological growth. When you impose meaning too quickly, you build on unstable ground. This is why some people repeat the same patterns. In more spiritual or self-aware forms, they change the language, but not the structure. They move forward without truly letting go. If you are experiencing this stage, you may notice a strong urge to fix yourself, to find the next answer, the next framework, the next explanation. But Jung would say, what you are experiencing is not a problem to solve. It is a process to endure. Endurance here does not mean suffering. It means not interfering, allowing the psyche to reorganize itself, trusting that something deeper is at work beneath the surface. This stage often feels lonely, not because you are alone, but because it is hard to explain. Others may not understand why you seem quieter, why you no longer chase what everyone else does, why you're less reactive, less driven, less certain. But this uncertainty is not confusion. It is openness. The old map no longer applies, but a new one has not yet formed. And this space between maps is where transformation occurs. Jung believed that the self, the deeper organizing center of the psyche, does not speak loudly. It does not issue commands. It communicates through shifts in energy, through loss of interest, through subtle attraction, through silence. When the ego stops dominating, the self begins to emerge. But the ego experiences this as loss of control, which is why this stage feels destabilizing. If you are here now, there is nothing you need to do, nothing you need to become, nothing you need to force. Your task is not action. It is patience, not passive patience, but attentive patience. Notice what no longer works. Notice what no longer excites you. Notice what feels empty, without immediately trying to fill it. This emptiness is not absence. It is potential. In the next part of this video, we will explore why the ego panics during this phase, why it tries to drag you back into old identities and familiar patterns, and why returning too quickly often leads to deeper stagnation. For now, let this be enough. If life feels empty after you stopped avoiding yourself, you are not broken. You are not lost. You are not behind. You are between forms. And according to Carl Jung, that is exactly where transformation begins. This is the inner shadow signal. We continue. When emptiness appears after inner work, most people assume something is wrong. But Carl Jung saw the stage differently. He believed the real danger was not emptiness itself, but what the ego does in response to it. Because when the old identity loosens, the ego begins to panic. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. The ego's primary task is simple: to maintain continuity, to answer the question, who am I? It does this by clinging to roles, narratives, and goals, even painful ones, because pain with meaning feels safer than freedom without structure. When old identities dissolve, the ego experiences something close to death, not physical death, but symbolic death, the death of certainty, the death of orientation, the death of familiar self-image. And Jung warned that the ego will do almost anything to avoid this experience. This is where regression begins, not because you failed, but because the ego fears the unknown more than it fears suffering. Regression does not always look like collapse. Often, it looks responsible. You return to old routines, old ambitions, old emotional patterns. You tell yourself you are getting back on track, but psychologically, something else is happening. The ego is reclaiming control. Jung observed that the ego prefers a known limitation over an unknown expansion, because expansion cannot be predicted, and the ego survives on predictability. This is why, during this phase, you may feel an intense urge to define yourself again, to answer questions like, what should I be doing with my life? What is my purpose now? What is the next step? These questions feel urgent, but Jung would say they are premature. Premature answers are seductive. They relieve anxiety. They restore structure, but they often pull you back into the very patterns that needed to dissolve. This is where many people mistake ego relief for psychological progress. They feel better, more motivated, more focused, but beneath the surface, nothing has truly changed. Jung warned that forced meaning is one of the most subtle traps of the psyche. When meaning is imposed too early, it becomes rigid, and rigidity always belongs to the ego, not the self. The ego also uses spirituality, psychology, and self-improvement as tools of control. It says, I understand this now. I've integrated it. I've moved beyond that. But understanding is not the same as integration. And saying you are beyond something often means you are avoiding it. This is why some people become attached to the identity of being deep, aware, or healed. These identities feel elevated, but they can be just as restrictive as older ones. Jung called this inflation. The ego expands by identifying with insight, mistaking knowledge for transformation. Inflation feels powerful, but it is fragile, and it collapses under pressure. During this stage, you may notice an urge to explain yourself more, an urge to justify your choices, an urge to be seen as evolving. These are not signs of confidence. They are signs of ego defense. Another common reaction is nostalgia. You remember earlier versions of yourself, times when things felt simpler, clearer. You may think, I was happier then. I had more drive then. But often what you are missing is not joy, it is certainty. The ego equates certainty with safety, so it romanticizes the past to avoid the discomfort of the present. Jung believed that the psyche must pass through a stage of disorientation before it can reorganize itself at a deeper level. This stage cannot be skipped. If you try to bypass it, you repeat it. This is why some people cycle endlessly. They awaken, they feel empty, they rebuild, de-identity, they feel dissatisfied again. Each cycle feels different, but the structure is the same. The ego also uses fear to regain control. You may hear thoughts like, you're wasting time, you're falling behind, others are moving forward. These thoughts feel rational, but they are driven by anxiety, not truth. Jung emphasized that the self operates on a different timeline than the ego. The ego wants speed, the self wants coherence, and coherence cannot be rushed. This conflict creates inner tension. One part of you wants to wait, another part wants to act. One part feels ready to let go, another part is terrified of drifting. This tension is not a mistake. It is the psyche negotiating transformation. Many people interpret this tension as a sign they need guidance. They look for external authority, a teacher, a system, a method. But Jung warned against outsourcing this phase because the answers you borrow cannot replace the order that must arise from within. Another common mistake is turning emptiness into an identity. You say, I'm in my dark night, I'm in my void phase, I'm in my healing era. These labels feel validating, but they also freeze movement. They give the ego a new role to inhabit. True transition does not announce itself. It does not brand itself. It simply unfolds. The ego hates this lack of recognition. It wants to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be certain that something is happening. But transformation often happens without witnesses. Jung believed that the deepest changes occur in silence. When the ego is no longer narrating every step, when the psyche is allowed to work without interference. If you are in this phase, you may feel tempted to go back to what once defined you, a relationship, a career path, a version of yourself that felt recognizable. This does not mean you should judge yourself, but it does mean you should pause. Ask not, is this wrong? But, is this familiar? Familiarity is not the same as truth. Jung wrote that neurosis often arises, not from suffering itself, but from resistance to the necessary. And sometimes what is necessary is uncertainty. This is why surrender is often misunderstood. Surrender does not mean giving up. It means releasing the ego's demand to control timing, outcome, and identity. The ego wants guarantees. The self does not provide them. It offers direction only when you are ready to follow, not when you demand reassurance. If you are trying to force clarity, force purpose, force enthusiasm, you may be interfering with something more subtle trying to emerge. In the next part of this video, we will explore what happens when you stop searching for meaning and allow it to return on its own terms. How energy reappears, not as urgency, but as steadiness. How action returns, not as pressure, but as alignment. For now, remember this. If you feel the urge to go back, it does not mean you are regressing. It means the ego is afraid. And fear, in this context, is not an enemy. It is a sign that something old is losing its authority. According to Carl Jung, this is the moment where many turn away, but those who stay, without forcing, without fleeing, discover that meaning does not need to be chased. It arrives when the ground is ready. This is the inner shadow signal. Let's continue. After the ego loosens its grip, after the panic quiets, after the urge to return fades, something subtle begins to happen. Not all at once, not dramatically, but quietly. Carl Jung believed that the psyche is self-regulating. When interference stops, when control relaxes, the inner system begins to reorganize itself, not according to the ego's plans, but according to a deeper order. Jung called this order the self. The self does not arrive with announcements. It does not provide instant clarity. It does not give you a 5-step plan. What it offers first is orientation, a sense of direction without urgency. This is where many people get confused. They expect meaning to return as excitement, as ambition, as passion, as a sudden calling. But meaning rarely returns that way. Those are ego signals. The self moves differently. What begins to emerge first is often discernment. You start noticing what drains you without overanalyzing it. You notice what no longer fits without needing to justify it. You feel a quiet resistance to certain situations and a quiet pull toward others. Not obsession, not craving, just clarity. You stop asking, what should I be doing? And begin sensing, this doesn't belong anymore. That alone changes everything. Jung observed that when the ego stops demanding meaning, meaning begins to appear naturally, not as answers, but as alignment. You may notice that your energy returns, but in a different form, not restless, not frantic, steady. You wake up without dread. You move through the day with less friction. Nothing extraordinary happens, yet something feels right. This is one of the clearest signs that the psyche is reorganizing, when life feels quieter, but more coherent. Another sign is simplicity. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself constantly. You don't rehearse conversations in your head as much. You don't monitor your reactions so closely. You respond instead of manage. Jung believed that when the self begins to lead, the ego returns to its proper role, not erased, not destroyed, but no longer in charge. This is why confidence at this stage feels different. It is not loud. It does not seek reassurance. It does not require validation. It is simply present. People may begin to experience you differently. They might say, you seem grounded. You seem calm. You've changed. But you may not feel changed. You may feel more yourself. This is not because you added something. It is because you stopped defending, stopped performing, stopped clinging. Jung wrote that individuation is not becoming a better version of yourself. It is becoming more whole. Wholeness includes contradiction. It includes uncertainty. It includes limits. At this stage, you no longer need to be special to feel valuable. You no longer need to be strong to feel safe. You no longer need to be certain to move forward. This is where relationships change, not because you demand less or more, but because you show up differently. You no longer enter interactions trying to prove your worth or protect your identity. You meet others from a place of sufficiency. Some relationships fall away here, not with drama, with quiet honesty. Others deepen, not because they're perfect, but because they are real. The same happens with work, creativity, and direction. You may find yourself drawn to simpler tasks, more grounded pursuits, work that feels meaningful, not because it impresses, but because it fits. This can be unsettling in a culture that celebrates intensity and ambition. But Jung warned that a life built only on ambition eventually collapses. Because ambition belongs to the ego. Meaning belongs to the self. Meaning is not always exciting. Often it is stable. And stability, when it is authentic, is deeply nourishing. Another important shift happens here. You stop searching for signs that you are on the right path. You stop needing confirmation. Because something inside feels settled, this does not mean doubt disappears. It means doubt no longer controls you. You can feel uncertainty without being paralyzed by it. Jung believed that this capacity, to hold tension without collapse, was one of the marks of psychological maturity, not resolution, but containment. From this place, action returns, but it is not forced. You do not act to escape discomfort. You act because something feels timely. You might take steps that once felt terrifying and now feel natural. You might decline things that once felt obligatory. Without guilt, this is not indifference. It is integrity. You are no longer negotiating with every impulse. You trust yourself to respond, and that trust is built, not on certainty, but on experience. Jung emphasized that the self does not eliminate struggle, but it changes your relationship to it. Struggle becomes meaningful instead of chaotic. You may still experience periods of emptiness, but they no longer feel threatening. They feel familiar, like winter returning after a season of growth. You understand now that emptiness is not an enemy. It is part of the cycle, a necessary pause, where old forms dissolve to make room for what is next. This understanding brings humility. You stop expecting permanent clarity. You stop demanding constant progress. You accept rhythm, and with acceptance comes relief. You no longer feel behind. You no longer feel broken. You no longer feel like you missed something. Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, but he did not mean a perfected self. He meant an integrated one. Integration does not shine. It settles. It does not announce. It endures. If you have reached this stage, or are approaching it, trust what is unfolding. Do not rush to define it. Do not rush to explain it. Do not rush to turn it into an identity. Let it be quiet. Let it be incomplete. Let it shape you without needing your approval. The deepest transformations are not experienced as breakthroughs. They are experienced as returns. A return to simplicity. A return to presence. A return to what feels honest. And when that happens, you may realize something surprising. You were never lost. You were never empty. You were clearing space for something more real. This is the inner shadow signal. And if life feels quieter now, less dramatic, less urgent, it may be because you're no longer avoiding yourself. And according to Carl Jung, that is where real life begins.